Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the Town of Somers Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is November 16th, 2021. Denise, would you please take the roll?
Ms. DiPolito?
Here.
Mr. Gio?
Here.
Mr. Hardin?
Here.
Mr. Lansky?
Here.
Mr. Newman?
Here.
Chairman Canestra?
Here.
Thank you.
I'd request everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Before I get to the agenda this evening, I just wanted to make a special announcement. One member of our board, Mr. Ronald Carpenetta, he has been on the board for well over 20 years, and he has just recently resigned. I wanted to publicly thank him for his service to the board. For over 20 years, he served without pay as a volunteer, and his counsel and advice was very useful to us. He was a building inspector down county, and he always was a wealth of information, very helpful to us. And so he will be very much missed from this board. So Ron, if you're out there listening, we want to thank you very much for your service. It's very much appreciated. Okay, thank you. We are going to go to the first item on the agenda this evening. This of Michelle Fasone. This is an application for a covered front porch replacement requiring a front yard setback and a lot coverage variance to an existing one-family dwelling in an R40 residential district at 1 Linway Lane, Somers. Sir, if you could just give us your name and how you, what your position is in regard to the applicant.
My name is Bob Eberts. I'm from Cross River Architects, and I'm representing the owner, Michelle Fasone. Here.
Okay, thank you very much. Could you briefly describe your application for us?
Yes, the current house is in a 1 acre zone. The property is just over 40,000 square feet. And it's a raised ranch, single family residence. There's a deck in the back of the house that's not in good shape. There's also a small porch, concrete porch in the front of the house that's crumbling. So the owners would like to replace that deck and replace the front porch. So the current structures are non-conforming in that they are currently within the front setback, the side setback. That's the deck is in the side setback, the front porch is in the front setback, and it's over the lot coverage also. So we're replacing the deck, but we're sliding the deck a little bit further north, which is towards me on the site drawing there, or to the right of your drawing, so that we're out of that side yard setback. The deck is staying approximately the same size, but it's moving away from that side yard.
So you do not need a side
We
yard
do not
variance?
need a side yard setback. We're eliminating that nonconformity.
Okay, because I don't see that in the application. I want to make sure that that's clear. Okay,
That's correct.
good.
The front porch, however, is a uncovered concrete structure with stairs that come forward, and they are crumbling. The owners would like to replace them with a covered front porch with a roof over it, 2 columns, and stairs coming down toward the front. Now, that would still make that within the front yard setback. It actually exacerbates it a little bit because that front porch and the stairs are getting a little bit longer. So we're going from, well, the house itself sits 43 feet back from the property line, but the front porch extends about 7 feet forward. So it's about 4 feet already within the front setback. We're extending that to 33.6 feet. So extending it 2 feet more. So we're exacerbating that by 2 feet to make that porch a little bit nicer. Now, putting railings around the porch, so it doesn't seem quite as large. When you put the 10-inch columns on either side, you're taking away some of that space. So we're making that porch just a little bit bigger. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The zoning table says that the existing is 43.
That's to the existing house.
That's to the existing house.
Yes.
So
The
the
front porch
existing-
extends beyond that currently.
Okay, so that number would be 36 or something like
Yes,
that?
that's correct.
And then you're going to 33.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank
So the front porch, is proposed to have two columns, as you can see from the rendering, with a roof on it, a little decorative molding on it, again, to dress it up a little bit. We're putting some stone around the edge of the patio, the porch, to make it look attractive, really dressing it up, putting a railing around there that I think is going to make it look very nice. So again, we do need that front yard variance. The variance that we're requesting is 6.4 feet. So we're extending it about 2 feet more than it currently is. The second variance that we're requesting is a lot coverage. Now, in this zone, 6% is allowed. Currently, we've got 7.71% coverage. And what we're proposing, because of the slightly larger porch, is 7.85, which is an increase of about 53 square feet. So it's a very small increase in area. And again, really, it's because those columns are sitting there. That porch would be very small. You wouldn't really be able to sit on that porch at all if since we're adding those columns, if we didn't increase that 2 feet. So that's really the extent of the application.
Excuse me for 1 second. Denise, I'm recusing myself from this applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it certainly does seem like you're dressing up the front porch quite a bit here. It seems like it's a nice improvement from what I can see here. I don't see the variances really being very significant here. So are you ripping out everything that's there right now, the front porch?
Yes,
Okay, so you're basically starting from scratch here and coming up.
yes,
Foundation and,
that's correct.
okay.
There's one other small thing that I'll point out to you. It's a little unusual. There's a stone wall currently sitting right next to the left-hand garage door. Right tight to the garage. And that stone wall comes out about 20 feet or so. And the garage doors are fairly narrow as they are. So I keep saying that, they've got new drivers, somebody's going to hit that wall eventually. So we're moving that wall over about a foot towards the porch and paving that 1 foot area, just to give them a little bit more, so that as you're pulling out of that garage a little bit crooked, we don't catch that stone wall.
And is that wall necessary, kind of like a retaining wall? Because,
It retains a little bit of earth. It's about 2 feet high.
so you do need it there, though. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
necessity. Okay.
So because we're pulling that wall back, there's about 20 foot of asphalt paving that we're adding to the impervious coverage, or to what we're now calling the principal building lot coverage.
Right.
So that's in there too. So really, we're only adding about 30 feet for the porch, 20 feet or so for the driveway, and that's the 50 feet
Right.
that we're increasing. It's very small changes.
Yeah, we've been encountering a lot of these situations where there doesn't seem to be much development on the lot, but it's still going over lot coverages. So, we've actually sent some information to town board for them to look at this situation, because, if you just look at your site plan here and you look at the house, very modest driveway, and you're already over, so we understand the problem. And some other applicants have come before us with significant increases above what the zoning allows, and we've had to either deny it or delay any decision on it. But to me, this is somewhat modest. But okay.
I think it's a thoughtful application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think the variances are small. We're also fixing the non-conforming deck in the back, which is making it better for the side yard setback. So I think it's a good application. I'd be inclined to approve it.
Any other questions of the applicant, or any other discussions we want to have in regard to this? What I'd like to do, is there anybody here in the audience who wishes to speak in regard to this application? Any comments? We received no response. Okay. Sir, anything else that you wanted to add? I also think it's an attractive addition, and I think the variances are minor, so you'll need 4 votes to have approval or denial, depending on how the board votes. Yeah.
No, I
Any,
don't-
any further comments that you have?
I don't have anything else to
Anything
add.
Okay. Any final comments from the board? Any questions, issues, concerns?
I don't have any.
No? Okay. All right, let's go to a vote. I'll take a motion as to the type of action.
I'll make a motion type 2.
Second.
Ms. Polito,
Aye.
Mr. Geo.
Recusing.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Mr. Harden,
Aye.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion as to whether we're going to accept or deny the application?
Make a motion to accept the application as submitted.
Second.
Bill, was that you?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Polito,
Aye.
Mr. Harden,
Yes.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, your application has been granted.
Thank you. I know you are sending a recommendation to the town board to change the zoning ordinance or to modify it. I would ask you or urge you to define building. There's no definition for building in this code, and it probably causes a majority of the confusion in this code. So if that can be included, that would really go a long way
Yeah,
towards improving this
We've
code.
tried to, we made some recommendations for some definitions as to buildings and lot coverage and made some, what we thought to be recommendations.
You're welcome to appear Thursday.
I will be there.
The town board is reviewing our letter. And, please add what your thoughts are.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Night.
Second item on the agenda this evening is that of Heritage Hills Society. This is an application for an area variance for propane tanks, as well as placing them underground in a DRD at 8 Heritage Hills Drive, Somers. Sir, could you give us your name and how you represent the applicant?
Yes, good evening. My name is John Milligan. I'm the property manager for Heritage Hills Society. Back in July, we came before this board asking for a variance for the installation of 2 1,000-gallon propane tanks, buried tanks, in conjunction with a larger project to replace the ailing and failing generator in our activities building. Of course, that
I
building
recall that, yes.
serves as an emergency shelter for the town as well. We discussed why propane made more sense than diesel and why putting the tanks underground, keeping them out of harm's way made sense. Since then, Tom Toom and I have met a number of times with a representative, Halstead Quinn. They're a company that society uses to supply propane. They also do propane tank installations. And we learned, the 2 1,000-gallon tanks was based on the generator manufacturer's specifications in terms of the usage, the runtime on 1,000 gallons of propane. Since then, we learned from Halstead Quinn that it's not just as simple as 2,000 gallons, it will run X amount of time. I think you all have a copy of a letter that this individual from Halstead Quinn, he's the service manager. And he kind of explained.
I don't think we do,
In
but-
technical term, I have copies if you don't.
Sorry, John.
Um,
Yeah, if you want to
I
pass.
think it's probably important to.
Sure.
Oh, I do. It is in
It's in it?
everybody's packet.
Okay.
It looks like
I'll
this.
take one.
I do not see
I
that.
don't have that.
No,
Ah. Apologies.
Thank you.
Thank
it's
you.
okay.
John.
We can. Thank you, sir. Just give us a minute just so we can run through this so we can get a feel for what's going on here.
I'm sorry.
So it appears to me, bottom line here, we had two tanks, which according to Halsted Quinn, might carry you for 3 to 4 days by doubling the tank capacity. And, they have a lot of other technicalities in here. It gives the facility more of a 6 to 8 day range of operating before a refill is necessary.
Yeah, that's kind of what Tom and I focused on, that short paragraph just below the chart on page 2, which gives you the estimated run times based on 3 tanks or 4 tanks. And of course, Tom and I remember back in March of 2018, which is the last time we used that generator, and the last time that building was used as an emergency shelter, we ran the generator for 6 days. So we thought it foolish to consider anything that gives us less than that kind of capacity. Now, granted, there is a possibility to get a delivery, but in the event of a big storm, it might be 3 or 4 days before the roads are clear. You can't be sure that you're going to be able to get a delivery of propane. So we thought it made sense to go with the 4 tanks, get us a week of runtime. These are all based on full load conditions, which may or may not be the case depending on the time of year. Yeah, I'm sorry. In addition, Tom and I looked at it, and you may wonder, well, how big an area do we need to put 4 tanks? The tanks themselves are 41 inches in diameter. They're 16 feet long. You require a minimum separation of 3 feet in between the tanks. So roughly, you're talking about a 20-foot by 30-foot area to put 4 tanks in the ground. There's certainly plenty of room, and still stay beyond that 100-foot setback. You remember we were close to that wetlands buffer. So there's plenty of room. It's a level area. We've already checked. There are no utilities except for a sprinkler system we just put in this summer, which we'll have to move. But there's really nothing in the way. We had the room, and I think most of us would be more comfortable with a week runtime in the event of a huge storm power outage condition.
Right. I do like the idea also that if these tanks were to leak, they don't pose a ground contamination issue here.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we wanted to move away from diesel. It's very cumbersome to store, transport diesel. And, there's the possibility of a 5-gallon can spilling over, and you are close to a wetlands there. So propane tanks make sense. We might like to keep them. It's a busy parking lot. We'd like to keep them out of harm's way underground. And I think it makes sense to, give ourselves a week runtime in the event of any major weather circumstance that comes about.
I do have a couple questions. Some of them may be directed right to you, Tommy. I realize that you have to have a setback for a propane tank from a building. Okay. But for 4 tanks in the ground, I'm not concerned about pollution. I understand that. But what happens if there's a major fire? Would the Somers Fire District can we get some input from the Somers Fire District about 4 tanks in the ground, even though we have approved tanks in the ground in the past, but not 4 tanks? I'm concerned about the 4 tanks in the ground. And I understand the reason why. I'm not against that, but I'd like to get a little bit more input from the Somers Fire District, what their feelings are about 4 tanks in the ground. God forbid something happens.
Are you worried about location?
No, location and if
just
they
tanks.
catch on fire.
And you're saying that there's an increased chance of them catching on fire based upon there being more?
4 tanks, yes.
No, he's saying if there is a fire.
If there is a fire, 4
So
tanks
you're
in
worried
the
about a
ground.
fire in the building?
No,
going to
4
the
tanks.
tank.
If the
A fire
tanks catch on
generated by the
fire,
tanks?
the tanks catch on fire. 4 tanks in the ground catching on fire.
have
I
you-
have witnessed long time ago, Suburban, one of their tanks catching on fire. One of their big tanks catching on fire,
It's
and they couldn't put it out.
It's
They
pretty
had to
hard
let it
do.
burn out.
I've seen a backhoe pull a gas line out of a propane tank. And nothing happened several times by, being
Okay,
on-
but
being
there's
on
no,
construction sites. I don't,
but there was no
I-
spark.
well, there's no spark, but and those things, you have to really, there has to be quite a set of circumstances.
No,
there to
listen, I
create a fire.
understand all that, but I'm playing the worst scenario here.
I don't, okay.
At least where we tentatively located these tanks, the closest tank would be, I think, in excess of 50 feet away from the building. So none of the tanks are really going to be that close to the building. And of course, it's just the little fill housing is the only thing that protrudes above ground. So I'm not sure that they'd be close enough to the building to really pose a significant risk to the building catching fire if there was an incident. Tommy, you're a fireman, so you may know better.
Wouldn't they propel themselves?
No,
No, I mean,
No,
I'm
they're-
not, I'm not
they're on the
joking. Like
ground.
if there's a spark and there's actually a fire, they're actually gonna shoot out like a torpedo.
Well, if they're
I mean,
underground, I don't think they would be, they're
No,
probably anchored.
Yeah,
I mean, they're gonna, but they don't, it's not like they're just gonna flare. I mean, but they don't, it's a really hard.
No, I realize
set of
that there is a
circumstances.
relief valve, but where was it where the manufacturer that did propane tanks? I'm not propane, acetylene tanks.
That's a total
The
different
whole,
thing.
the whole yard went up.
Whole different thing on.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
but
those-
still, you know,
those you
I'm thinking about the worst scenario
You could
where you
just-
do have,
yeah.
one tank catches on fire, catch the other on fire, and you have 4 flames going through the
What-
relief valve.
What's the heating in the building?
We have hot water baseboard. The boiler's
Hot
on
wa-
the opposite side. of the
Okay, but
building.
how is that? What's the fuel?
Heating oil, number
Heating
2
oil.
heating oil, yeah.
Okay,
So that tank is on the other side of the building from.
so
where
what is the
generator's located.
125 kW doing?
125 kW is the generator in case of a
No,
power.
I understand it's a generator, but like you're doing lighting, you're not doing heating.
Well, you're doing
No,
heating because
no,
there
you
are
are doing
circulator pumps that are electric to get the water to
That's
flow.
That's a very minimal load. Those have no draw. So you're doing lighting and
Well-
a couple of refrigerators, like,
Oh, Lighting throughout the whole, but keep in mind, it's a 12,000 square foot building. If you have a power failure in the summer, there's a huge air conditioning load in that building. I mean, we have in the Heritage Room alone, there's 2 10-ton units, which are 200 amp draw just unto themselves. So the concern in terms of a load is more pronounced in the summer than it would be in the winter.
are those heat pump units? Or are they?
Well, they're, the ones on the Heritage Room do happen to be heat pump, combination heat pump condensing units, yes.
Okay.
But the whole building, basically is hot water baseboard, the heat.
Does
So the
this-
load concerns are much greater in the summer in term, and then, Then
It's
in the,
it's mostly AC that you need. that
yeah,
tanks for.
absolutely. There's, in the winter, circulator pumps don't take much current. And it's just pretty much, you're right, lighting.
Does this generator power the activity center and the fitness center?
No, this is strictly just for the activity.
Just the activity center.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame because there's showers in in the fitness center. I was there in March of 18. I spent a few days there, often going in and out of there. But it would be nice to have the fitness center powered versus just.
Well, we do
it's just-
have,
the-
we do
the main room
have
is just lights, you know.
yeah,
it's
we do
lights.
have a standby generator for the security office to make sure the security radios and their equipment is running through a power outage. So there is a 22 kW that just powers that security office in the fitness center.
And the existing generator was 125 kW.
No, it's only 60 kW, which is part of the problem in the summer. I mean, we had,
So
not this summer, 2 summers ago, we had a storm in August and, it was on standby as a cooling center, but that generator was not capable of running all of the air conditioning loads in that building. Now, there's areas you could turn off, obviously, but, I think we've had peak loads demands of 76, 78 kW, something in that order in the summer. So 60 kW is just, it's not sufficient in the summer. And I think the town's already awarded a contract for an electrical contractor to put in this 125 kW generator. So now we're just determining, what fuel do we need and how much of it for that 125 kW.
John, is it worth talking about your sprinkler system?
Yeah, I don't think it has any really bearing on this particular application.
they would just tie the pump in. And those have a big, those have a
It's
big
big
pole.
draw.
Those are
Mhm.
sometimes 400 amps for,
Yeah, it's a big compressor, absolutely.
that's a good point. It's a big pole.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important project. It's been delayed. It's been delayed for quite a while now. There were several delays, and it's not. This isn't just for Heritage Hills. This is the town's emergency heating and cooling center, depending on the season.
Yeah, I see this is kind of an important application. Do you know the approximate square footage of the activity center?
The building is about 12,000 square feet.
About 12,000?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to have a general idea. Okay. Yeah, because obviously if a storm comes and it's needed, it's vital. Tommy, is there any fire department requirement for inspections or review of these things before they go in or after they're in? Or is that not really?
Not for the fire department, it's in my office,
Okay, through the building department?
yeah,
That there's, kind of reviews before they're installed?
yes.
And then, are there annual inspections of these or how is that really done?
It's, the filler is responsible for doing an inspection on.
So Halsted Quinn or whoever it is, Suburban. Okay, so they're responsible for maintaining their tank, the tanks.
Yeah, if there's something wrong with the tank, they're not permitted to fill it.
Right,
They have they're date stamped and they're only viable for so many years.
then they'll have to replace them or
Then they have
whatever.
to be removed and replaced depending on what certification it has. It could be 20 years or 15 years or something like that
Right.
for a propane tank.
Yeah, 'cause
Nobody
sometimes-
checks that though, except on barbecue tanks.
Now I do have another question, to put my mind at ease here. With the 4 tanks being in the ground, if it gets approved, is there any way you can notify the fire department to let them know that there are 4 tanks in the ground? Can that be done? To let them know ahead of time?
Do that tomorrow night if the fire bureau-
He can paint there's a little cap that comes out of the ground.
Mhm.
Instead of painting them green, we can request that they paint them yellow or red or something that's very visible, and gives people a warning that might be helpful.
I mean, my main concern is, we put, granted that, with propane tanks are in the ground. My concern is 4 tanks in the ground to let people know, the fire department know what they're coming against. God forbid there is a fire. So if we can notify them to let them know, or a sign being put up there, 4 tanks in the ground, to put my mind at ease, then I would go along with the favor of the 4 tanks in the ground to serve the public as a center for emergency purposes. That's my only concern.
The other thing you could ask, if you wanted to, for safety purposes, is that until the gas line gets buried to a certain depth, whether it be 12 inches or something like that it not be soft rolled copper. I mean, that's another thing that sometimes people do, have hard pipe until it's at a depth that you don't worry about a machine or something driving over the ground and breaking the pipe, right? So as your pipe goes down, I don't know what depth it's going to be as it comes across wherever it goes, but if it's relatively close to the surface going from the tank to the building, maybe it should be hard pipe, or it should be at least 12 inches or 16 inches down.
It's supposed to be 24 inches.
Then I would have no issue with that either. But as long as it's got to dive somewhere. So wherever it dives, in that first part, maybe it should not be soft copper. But that's,
Keep in mind that installation is subject to a plumbing permit and inspections by the building department. So
I'm just trying to follow
Okay,
Army
no.
safety ideas. to
No,
the
I'm
extent
not
that they-
concerned about the pipe itself in the ground. I'm concerned to let the fire district know that there's 4 tanks in the ground. That's my main concern. To let them know, God forbid there is a fire, at least this way they know what they're going into.
Notification will be made tomorrow.
Okay, so Tommy will make the notification, yeah. Because I know a lot of times, I think fire departments do have kind of lists at different commercial locations of maybe caustic materials or,
Yeah, they have a gas system that has a lot of information.
right, so they know that they're going to a specific location, what dangers that they might be presented with. So,
The safety thing.
sure. Okay,
Purpose to put them below ground is a safety issue versus the tanks being above ground.
No, I understand that too, Tommy.
Yeah.
less likely somebody drive into them or something else
Right.
happen to them. Right. I mean, I think it's a worthwhile project because, yeah, if you're only looking at currently 3 to 4 days of
Yeah, we're not
Coverage.
comfortable. I mean, we know in recent experience, it was just 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, we had that shelter open for 6 days.
Yeah. Better safe than sorry, as they say, so, okay. Any further questions of the applicant? Any further discussion we want to have as a board? There's no one here in the audience to speak in regard to the application, so we don't have any further public comment. Sir, is there anything else you wanted to offer at this point in time? Any?
No, I think we're all cognizant of the fact that these extreme weather events are happening more frequently than they have in the past. So I think it pays to be prepared for that eventuality.
I had a question, just, it's an area variance. Are they placing them underground in a DRD? Is that a use variance?
I think it's an area variance. We've had these, I know we've approved tanks before. We approved the tanks at this location. We also approved tanks at the
At the Chico's.
Chico's and the residential
Condominiums.
development where we approved like 60 of them, you know, for
Right.
each unit.
So
Yeah.
the storage of hydrocarbon products, except those used, are prohibited in the DRD district. So is that an area variance or a use variance? If it's- Well, I'm just reading this. I haven't looked up the DRD, but if hydrocarbons, and we looked it up once, are prohibited, then isn't it a use variance? And I'm not saying that and then, trying to cast this project in a negative light. I just want to make sure that he gets the appropriate variance.
Good question.
So I'll pull it up.
Well, I know in July, an area variance was what was approved,
Yeah.
whether that was the
We've always done an
appropriate.
area variance in all of these.
I'm just
No,
asking
no,
the
no,
question.
it's okay. No.
Yeah, no, it's good we analyze it. Trying to get it right.
Now, if this is approved, what's the timing for the placement of these tanks?
Well, Tom and I have been talking about that. We may in fact use the town highway department. We'd like to get the tanks in the ground this fall before the winter if we can. We're probably looking at a pretty significant lead time for the generator, but we'd like to be in a
Sounds about right.
position, as soon as we get that generator, hook it up and be good to go. I think the likelihood is won't be till the spring at the earliest that we see that generator, but if the tanks are in the ground, I mean, there's no hope of putting the tanks in the ground in midwinter. So if the opportunity presents itself, we'd like to get those tanks in the ground this year.
Who's bearing the cost of this? Is this a town expenditure or town is,
Yeah, for installation and materials.
right?
And Heritage Site is responsible for keeping the fueling and maintaining it thereafter.
Okay. Because it's benefiting Heritage, obviously, and it's benefiting the whole town. This is an emergency shelter here. Something, okay,
That was the deal with the last generator.
right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. I remember we had a really bad snowstorm. It was, like October 31st. Remember that?
Snowtober.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
That was the Halloween
Halloween,
disaster. So yeah, they can occur anytime. We could get another one of those things right now. So yeah, I think the sooner this project gets going, the better.
Well, during Hurricane Sandy, which was the year after that Halloween snowstorm, the shelter was open for 4 or 5 days
Yeah.
in that instance as well. I think it's been open for a day or two here and there. August of 2020, we had a storm that knocked out power, just a summer thunderstorm for 2 or 3 days. And unfortunately, we really didn't have the ability to open the building as an emergency shelter given the generator that we have.
Right. Yeah, I think this is a much needed emergency response position to have.
I'm not, I know it's here, I just haven't found it yet. I would think it's a use variance, but I would think that our review of it would be somewhat truncated based upon the public good and it being a collaborative town project. So I would assume that would go into decision making.
Yeah.
But if we just want to call it a variance and try to skirt the issue, we can do that, but I think it's easier to call it one or the other, whatever the board feels.
I mean, in the past, we have approved these.
As
I-
area
As area
variances.
variances, right? So,
But if hydrocarbon products are not allowed in the DRD, then I don't see how that's area.
Yeah, it's not that they're not permitted in the DRD district, in the DRD zone, it's they're not permitted in the groundwater protection overlay
Okay,
district.
so
And
how,
that's where- That's
so-
in that
so,
area.
but that's the same thing in terms of an analysis, right? Because it's a use which is not permitted in that district. And when a use isn't permitted in the district, it's a use variance. Unless I'm missing something. An area variance would be for a use permitted in that area, that in that zone, but you're just changing a setback or something. Or square footage. So I think it's a use variance.
have you been able to find in the code though where it's prohibited in the DRD district?
Not yet, but maybe Tommy knows.
Go to the ground.
Oh, so I'm looking under DRD.
Yeah.
That's my problem. Thank you. Groundwater use is permitted. Prohibited. So 170-32-7. H, you got it. The storage of hydrocarbon products except those necessary for residential use in homes and vehicles, provided that such products are stored in appropriate containers. I assume this doesn't qualify as a residential use, Tom? I assume this is a commercial use. So it's a use variance as against not, this states is prohibited in the DRD. It's not. It's prohibited in the groundwater protection overlay GP district. But personally, I'm in favor of approving a use variance for this.
Yeah, I mean, use variances have a very high standard to overcome.
But we have a public good collaborative project, which is when you put your balancing test on,
Right.
changes the nature.
Yeah, I would agree, due to the circumstances here.
We have Warren Street there, which is why Heritage continually, despite having its wires underground, continually loses power. There is a lot of the lines down there. There's a lot of old trees right there. And you have a very elderly population in some of Heritage who could be affected by the heat much more than a standard population. And so in a normal place, you wouldn't be such a terrible thing not to have the AC on, but in a place like Heritage with that type of population, you could lose people.
Oh, without question.
You get 90-degree days, the grid goes down because our grid is pretty much insufficient as it is.
Still questioning whether we're really changing the use of the property by putting these tanks in there. Seems odd to me, but
It's a,
technicality.
you're not changing the use of the property, but you are taking on a prohibited use
Yeah.
within this overlay district.
But are we just expanding upon because it's allowed for residential
Well,
and that expansion would fall under an area variance? And I think that's how we've always done it in the past.
the thing which I think where Tommy or many building inspectors draw the line between residential and commercial uses. Residential use is something you would only use in your particular home versus a commercial use is an activity center or something like that. Even though we're serving residents, it's a commercial use. The gym there is a commercial use in a DRD.
I mean, area variances are usually dimensional in nature, so I guess this might not be dimensional, so.
But then we're looking at notice.
Well, right, do we have then a notice problem because we have noticed an area variance and not a use
But it
variance?
an application for area variance for propane tanks, as well as placing them underground in our DRD. It should say in a groundwater protection overlay GP district. But frankly, I don't think that is fatal. I mean, it does say as well as. Denise would be the one to ask that question.
I just take my directions.
Perhaps we could solve the problem with 2 variances.
Yeah, well, there is no, I don't see an actual area variance because I don't think there is a setback issue as against the buildings or the wetland. No, I didn't see a survey and the wetland flagged or anything, but you know, I'm familiar with that building. I'm assuming from what Mr. Milligan says that we don't have those issues. So we're approving a use variance.
I mean, it may be somewhat moot in that I think the board would probably approve it, whether it's an area variance or a use variance, you know.
But it's because of the test gets mitigated by the public good.
Right.
Are we approving two additional tanks here tonight? Or are we approving, we already approved 2
We already
approved two.
approved 2
with an area
with
variance?
an area variance, and this is an additional 2.
Well, are we amending that variance or are we giving them a new variance?
I think we're,
This one doesn't say 2.
I think we're giving them a variance tonight. And if our resolution says we providing a use variance, then that's the most recent one on file and that will be the prevailing one.
I mean, I don't think anybody on the board is objecting to this, whether it's a use variance or an area variance, so it may be more, you know, semantics at this point in time. You know, I understand the use variance approval has a much higher hurdle to cross, but
If we approve an area variance, then somebody who is believes this should have been solar panels and EV batteries could come back and say he doesn't have the appropriate variance and that needs to be there. It's not the,
Which you could then be granted
which could
through
then,
another application.
which could then be granted through another application. But we're here.
So yeah, it's consistency versus,
Versus
Right.
my reading of
right.
the document, which
And now future applicants are gonna fall under a use variance test. That's gonna be a high burden.
if it's a
for-
commercial
Costs
property,
more.
And cost more.
And cost more.
And likely not have serving the public good as a necessity behind it.
But once again, if the issue is the code, then we're welcome to send a recommendation to the board. The code, certain portions of this code have been updated and certain portions have not been updated in a long time. And if we're actually seeing issues, then that's the way I think it should be addressed, not by putting a different name tag.
This is currently being reviewed for the town board. It's gone through, what's the?
A short EAF has been done. This went before the town board.
this specific
Yeah.
issue,
Yeah.
Propane out of it.
Yeah.
I think it's more for gasolines and diesel fuels and stuff. That would contaminate.
A short EAF was done and now it's got to go down to the county planning department, but it's been a process.
right? Just like
It's been
propane and
months.
natural gas don't
Right. so we
contaminate
are
the
trying
ground.
to get
They-
this
But keep in
changed,
mind that that has taken us almost 6 months.
At least,
And this has much more urgency than that.
yeah.
Oh, it appears this will be approved. It's just,
Yeah.
we're just debating which way to approve it. So this is. yeah.
Right.
Well, if you're going to recommend to the board that they change the code, that would take forever.
Well, they're already
In
doing that.
addition, that wouldn't stop us. We
They're
wouldn't
doing it
wait
on their
for
own,
that.
right?
But
Well, you
I-
want to make the recommendation
No.
after giving the variance?
No, I'm suggesting we give a use variance and I'm suggesting that rather than work on existing precedent, that we interpret the code the way we see it and where we see something which is improper or that can be improved, we make a recommendation.
But does this variance request jump the hurdles of being a use variance?
I think it does based upon the public good, based upon that this is also a town project. And the potential harm to that population. So I believe it does. So that's there, if you look at how they do the law, the balancing tests vary based upon the public interest. And I don't think that's an unreasonable sliding scale.
This kind of reminds me of when we approved the testing facility, COVID testing facility here in town, whereby normally you'd have to go to, architectural review board and planning board. And as a zoning board, we were able to bypass that and get it done because of the significant, public safety issue.
And I received 3 different tests there and was very thankful that it was there. It was indeed a public good.
If we do decide this is a use variance because this is application in its area, are we okay on notice, or is that going to be an issue?
It was, the public notice was for an area variance. And we asked to have the fee for this application waived.
Right.
And a use variance fee would be significantly more. And we specifically, got approval to.
What's the notice period? Generally?
I want to get around. having
It was
that.
in, it goes into the Somers record the Thursday before our meeting.
So it's a 5-day notice period?
Yeah, I have to send it in the week before.
Okay, but in general,
The week before our meeting, so that would be all the way into December.
no, I know, but perhaps we could leave it open, pass a resolution, but leave it open for some type of notice to go out. And then he wouldn't have to come back in December in a week's time, as long as we didn't have a whole bunch of people coming in saying we should keep it open. We could
But it would
have-
delay
But
their,
then they can't put them in
construction.
the ground.
yeah, they would delay their construction because
I think,
Well,
honestly,
not
I
necessarily,
think it's
because
unnecessary.
it would, our December meeting is on the 21st.
Right.
So it would need to go into the paper on
14th.
the 2nd for the 9th issue. And we would have to go back to the town board to get the fee waived, which couldn't happen until December 9th. I'm just,
and keep in mind, the town's paying the fee to the town, right? Is that?
Right.
the town is
Or-
waiving the
or
fee.
waiving.
they
Right, but I mean,
They waived the fee of $150.
Yeah, you
Right,
know.
but they waived the
Right.
fee of $150 and a resolution is generated.
Right,
And a use variance is significantly more.
right.
So if there were, so we've done this previously, we've approved these previously as area variances.
Correct. Every
Uh,
single one
and
says
it-
that in here.
And if the issue Bart raised is correct, then those could have potentially should have been use variances as well. So do we need to go back and fix those?
Well, some of them were residential, so.
But
those were-
they're not in front of us.
Right.
Right,
So
they're
What I'm
not-
saying, but this could be approved tonight as an area
This-
variance,
this could be
as,
approved tonight as an area variance.
and then
And then if
corrected
if
if
somebody raises an issue, then the applicant may end up having come back in front of us. But it might be the most expedient thing.
And
Given the public nature of this project, maybe that's something that we feel.
But
is
can't
appropriate.
we go ahead with what we planned for the area variance? And if anyone raises any questions about it, we could always change that to a use variance after going through the process for use variance.
We could
Well,
revisit it.
is that
But
the application? that
If we
Mr.
approve
Morgan
the
wants to
area
make?
variance, they could go on with their production.
Because he's the one taking the risk for society.
Well, I know the application, I believe tonight is for an area variance, which is the variance we received back in July. I mean,
The
I,
variance we gave to Chico's.
And also
Summers
to the
Plus
Boniello residential
For
development. too.
60 berry tanks.
But that's
Correct.
residential,
Right.
so that's not
Right, different.
a
yeah.
use.
but we also know that propane may be removed from that prohibited list. So it may be a moot point.
How do we
overall.
know that?
And in 5 years, we're gonna have batteries. We're not gonna need the propane. So it'll be doubly moot at that point in time. But, you know.
Yeah.
it's-
Well, if propane is removed from the variance as an element that is not a hydrocarbon, then we're just talking mutely here. We're not getting anything done.
we
Wouldn't matter whether we gave them an area variance or a use variance. really.
can't make it not a hydrocarbon. But you,
Well, they're gonna have to like create something.
Well,
They're
the town says
not gonna
exclude
call it
it.
hydrocarbon.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to call it something.
I mean, I think this easily could be characterized as a health and safety issue for both the residents of Heritage and the town of Somers as well. You know, that's my view, and that's why, to me, there's a little bit of urgency to get this done, get the tanks in the ground. I'd hate to be faced with, you know, some kind of a power outage situation, and, you know, the interpretation here at the zoning board has prevented us from having that generator in place and operational.
Yeah, that would be
Yes.
my concern, is that we're, technically maybe right, but from a practicality standpoint, we're delaying this thing and then something happens and, due to the delay, there's a problem.
And
So,
the generator is on order and has been on order for quite some time now. So.
I'm in favor of
Generator
moving
before-
forward.
well, he has an existing area variance. He can put 2 tanks there. You know,
well, I
Well, they
think-
gave us a warning about delivery, though. They don't expect delivery until early next year.
I think I'm in agreement with Melissa that I'm prepared to proceed on this as an area variance, and if the use variance issue comes up, we'll address it at that time.
Right.
I don't think there's a large risk in us doing that. I think the benefit substantially outweighs.
Right. And if we have to address it in the future, we'll address it.
Yep.
Even though Bart may technically be right on this,
yeah, well,
Listen,
I understand there are practical considerations.
right.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on this issue? Sir, did you have anything else to add at this point in time?
No, again, you know, it's been a concern of ours for quite a while. This generator that we have is failing. It was inoperable when the last power outage 2 summers ago, and the sooner we can get it replaced with a generator that's functional, the better. I think it's beneficial to Heritage Hills and beneficial to the town as well.
Thank you. We prepared to vote?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion as the type of action?
I'll make the motion type 2.
Second,
Mr. Polito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Harden,
I'll recuse myself.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion as to whether we're going to grant the application as presented to us this evening?
I'll make a motion to grant the application as presented for the 4 1,000-gallon underground propane tanks.
2.
Well, 2 are in, 2 more to come, right?
Right, so this is for 2 additional.
Okay, there's no
total of
number on
4.
it.
Right.
Got it.
Second.
Mr. Polito,
Aye.
Mr. Gio,
Aye.
Mr. Harden,
Recuse.
Mr. Lansky,
Aye.
Mr. Newman,
Aye.
Chairman Canestra.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, sir. Your application has been granted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda this evening is for UB Somers Inc. This is an application for 2 variances, one on the height of a new business sign and the other on the length of that sign in a neighborhood shopping district at 80 Route 6 Baldwin Place. I believe we have somebody online with us this evening. And sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is Mike.
Great. Can you just give us your full name and your position with the applicant?
Yeah, my name is Mike Conoscenti, and I represent Ivy Rehab, the tenant at that property that's opening up the business of subject.
Can you briefly describe what the business does?
It's a physical therapy for pediatrics. So
Okay. And the sign that you're presenting, you need two variances as indicated. I do see here a memo from the Architectural Review Board. So I guess you have presented this to them and they provided some comments.
Yeah, the Architectural Review Board liked the sign in general. It's just via code. There's two technical areas with the sign that prevented them from just passing it. The one being the overall height, because if you see the logo on Ivy Rehab, because that Y hangs down and then the V extends up top, it extends the overall height between the bottom of that Y and the top of the V over 24 inches. But every letter in that, every letter individually in that logo is under 24 inches. It's basically, they're all a 20-inch cap height. And then the other issue.
Right, so that's why you're asking for the 8-inch variance for the letters being too high.
Yeah, the overall, yeah, you know.
Okay.
And then the variance on the overall length, because of this, because of this particular end cap and the way their fascia is, they have 31 feet of frontage of actual store, but that fascia is 51 feet wide. So when you take a look at your code, you know, typically your code is the width of the sign can be 50% of the width of the wall. And the intent of that code is so the sign just doesn't look too overbearing on the wall. So you don't have this ridiculously large sign covering up 100% of the wall. If you take a look at the fascia, the sign actually proportionally fits very nicely, does not look too big on that 51 feet of width that they occupy. It's just that the store, the demising walls of the store itself or the clinic itself is 31 feet. So we're over the code by 8 inches in width, or I'm sorry, 14 inches in width.
It looks like it's too long by 1.4 feet.
No, it's the overall width is 16 feet, 8.5 inches. And we'd be allowed 15 feet, 6 inches. So we're over by 14.5 inches.
The application variance of 1.4 feet is needed. So you're saying it's something other than that? You're saying how many inches?
He says 1.2.
Saying 14 inches.
1.4 feet is,
Pretty close.
yeah.
Pretty close to 14.5 inches, yeah.
Okay, pretty close then. Okay.
But I don't understand, if you mix the V and the Y, are you off the fascia board? then?
No, and if you look at that building drawing, we're still on the fascia board. It's just that the overall height from the tip of that V to the tip of the Y exceeds your code of 24 inches.
Right. So the one way to cure this would be to just make the sign 24 inches high, proportionately less wide, which would probably make it around 12.5, 13 feet.
Yeah, the problem is that when we bring that tip of the Y and the tip of the V down to 24 inches, the rest of the letters become significantly small. It just, you know, again, right now the letters are about 20 inches tall. If we go that route, we're going to be knocking the size of that sign down substantially.
And this is also their logo.
Right.
Like their,
Yeah.
their national logo.
This is a standard, what you're
Yeah.
showing us here. Is that correct?
Yeah, I should also let you, yeah, Ivy Rehab is a national company. They have 200 locations in 10 different states throughout the country. And so this is their national brand. So I can't really modify the Y and the V. That's kind of their version of the golden arches type of thing.
Well, I'm okay with it if it fits onto that fascia board. I don't want it to extend off the fascia board.
Which it looks like
No.
the fascia board as on the diagram here is
Right.
45 inches high, so it looks like it would certainly fit. I assume that this is size representative is accurate here. It, from my rough looking at it, it seems to be.
Yes, this drawing is drawn proportionately, so
Oh,
you
okay.
are seeing what the sign will physically look like on the building. It's drawn proportionally to the building.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, due to the V and the Y being above and below, the rest of the letters would fit within that. So it'll be consistent with the rest of the signage in the shopping center. So I don't tend to have a big problem with it.
And I certainly do understand if you were to make that V and Y fit in there, keeping the same design, all the other letters are going to be very small.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Then you have a sign where I don't think you could even read it from any distance,
you don't want-
which doesn't help people find the location or find the business.
Okay.
I agree. It meets the spirit of our code, which is to have it look proportional, and having a couple letters, which is a signature. I kind of think is almost First Amendment issue, and I would agree with the applicant.
We don't have anyone here in the audience to speak in regard to this issue, so I'm not going to ask for public comments since we don't have anyone here. Any further discussion amongst the board? Any other questions or concerns?
These are channel letters, interior lit channel letters, I guess.
Correct. These are in accordance with everything else that's in the shopping center right now, internally lit channel letters, yes.
Okay.
And as I did mention, we do have a memo from the Architectural Review Board that they did not object to the design and colors of the sign proposed, but they couldn't approve it because of the size. So they had to come to us for the size. So I do like that ARV has taken a first look at this and
Yeah.
given their
Yeah.
comments to us. So that's
Yeah.
helpful. Any other comments from the board? Anybody else have questions? Discussion points? Sir, did you have anything else you wanted to add at this point in time?
No, I don't think so.
We ready to vote on this matter?
Yes.
Yes.
Take a motion as to the type of action.
I'd make a motion type 2. Second.
Mr. Polito?
Aye.
Mr. Vio?
Aye.
Mr. Harden?
Aye.
Mr. Lansky?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Hi.
Chairman Canestra?
Aye.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion as to whether we're going to grant or deny the application before us?
I'll make a motion to grant the application as proposed to the board.
I'll second it.
Mr. Polito?
Aye.
Mr. Vio?
Aye.
Mr. Harden?
Aye.
Mr. Lansky?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Hi.
Chairman Canestra?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations, sir. Your application has been granted.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'll be in touch, Mike.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Make the sign.
Have
Thanks.
a good evening.
Good
You
evening,
too.
sir. Last item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the meeting minutes from last month, October 19, 2021. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just going to approve by consensus. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Nope. Okay. So the minutes have been approved. I will make mention that next month's meeting is December 21st, 2021, right before Christmas. And we do have, I believe, at least one item on the agenda so far. So we will have a meeting. It will be at this location. And as always, the public is welcome to come. Any further matters, any other issues we have to discuss this evening? No. Okay, so I'm going to call an end to the meeting. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next month. Good night.
Have a good night, good evening.